2. All right, real life. Welcome, everybody. Another weekly for the new diffs architecture blueprint effort. So the agenda, I don't have it in front of me. Who has the first point? Stas. Go ahead.
Yeah, yesterday we had a call about data flow, and I wondered, like, how are we going to structure data on the backend side? I know that we have our diffs stored in the database already when we fetch them from Gitly. And I had a question, can we get just a small chunk of them instead of getting the whole merge request at once? And Igor, I think he's not on the call. So he replied that yes, we can do that, and we actually do that right now in the merge requests. So that is good to hear. I have a second question for that. Do we store each file separately? Like, does each file has its own record in the database? And I'm asking that because the diffs and batch method suggests we can apply some kind of pagination to that. Can we adjust these settings without affecting the performance? Basically, that's what I want to know. If anyone knows the answer to that question, I'll be very interested to know.
I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's best to continue the discussion asynchronously, and I'll add this here. I think this issue is the best place to identify gosh, what do I want to say? So there's the repository diffs and there's the merge request diffs, right? They're batched in different ways. Like on the commits, on the repository side, we just do pagination and we just like page 2, page 3, page 4 manually on the UI. On the merge request, we use, if I remember correctly, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, an increasing number of files at each batch request, but we show it all at once. There's a slight difference in how we present the data, but there might also be some differences in how the data is implemented on the back end. And I think for this project, we would want to have one single code base, right? Not have, if repository, if merge request. We would like to have one way of getting this, potentially with some options of like, is it persisted? Should we put it in the database? Should we put it in the cache? That sort of thing. So I think to identify like a core trunk of backend code to fetch and serve diffs data regardless of where it's being used, potentially with some params, cached, persisted, etc. It's just a message for like the backend folks involved in this, mostly like Igor and Patrick. And Justin, if you have any thoughts on that, I mean, of course, always welcome. It was a long way of saying I don't know, Stanislav. Should we carry on asynchronously with that? Oh, Stans, are you okay? Stans, are you frozen? I think we lost Stanislav. Either that or he's an incredibly good statue. Okay, so we'll carry on for the sake of time. Thanks for that. And I think it's important to carry on that till completion to understand this properly. So I wanted to I didn't have this in the agenda, but I just wanted to kind of pick your brains or just to see if there's anything that we need to discuss for the ongoing efforts that are in flight. The one is the data diagrams that Thomas is leading in orchestrating. He will need help. There's a Slack message that he shared earlier today. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Not a question, but it looks like Patrick is going to be looking into this tomorrow. So hopefully you'll get some feedback after that, like tomorrow, after tomorrow as well. Some input.
Good. Thomas, did you relate to each person their responsibility, their corner, so to speak, or is it inferred?
It's inferred. You mentioned to Patrick which section we were interested in having him look at. So I think only Justin and Staz are the only other two people. So obviously, Justin, we would hope that you would look at the Giddily section. Uh, that would be our goal.
Okay.
And then Staz is going to look at I think like the API front end type stuff. I do have it divided up. There is one note. There's a section. This is tough for in the past when the way that backend is divided up from API. That doesn't make a meaningful difference to backend. We can combine those and put them together. If there's nothing interesting going in like the API side and it's all in the backend side, we can just ditch it. So
that's combining the backend elements that you split up. Is that right? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that there's like, in the API part, we'll say, here's the endpoints that we'll be hitting and how they'll request out to the backend. And then the backend part's like, here's all the branches of where we'll get data from, and then we'll just feed it back to the API. But if that doesn't actually wind up happening in the documentation, it's just going to be a waste of space. So
I think it's a good start, and then we'll let them handle. I think there's definitely value in documenting those bits, but now we'll let the DRIs, I guess, clarify that what makes more sense.
Yeah.
Even just the concept of the API is still for me at least is a little bit unclear. We've talked in the past about where one, we don't want to rewrite things that are working, but two, for merge requests, for example, we're using a lot of internal endpoints, not public APIs, which is not good. And we've had some issues in the past where we needed something. What was it? VS Code. VS Code needed to do something with the MRs, and we had it, but it wasn't an internal endpoint, not in a public API. So we had to go and do the work for that. So I feel like one of the cute, interesting perspectives would be to have this project be based on public APIs. Now, whether that's REST, whether that's GraphQL, that's not for me to say, but something to bear in mind. Cool. Thanks, Thomas. I took a quick look and looks good as a starting point. Now we'll materialize all that. Sounds good. Any more thoughts on the data diagrams effort? Cool. I think this will be very useful for us to not only communicate our decisions, but also for ourselves to have more clarity on what's happening there. So that's good. Work breakdown. We have an issue, 1610 spike deliverable assigned to 3 engineers. And yes, I expect some of this to be more towards the later part of the milestone because we're still having a bunch of discussions, but I would expect work to start soon there and start to break that down. Is there any activity, anything that we can help with? Thoughts, questions? Yeah. So going directly more to Stas, do you have have you given any thought on how you're planning on setting up the collaboration for this? I think we might have spoken.
I think in multiple steps, yeah. First of all, I'll work on some like draft document. Then I'll just invite everyone to collaborate. Maybe we've missed something or just mislabeled something. Then we'll try to finalize it and just publish it in this issue or write in the diffs. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I think the opening of the issues and the opening of the epics is basically like the last step for all this. Like the orchestrating the steps and the bits is definitely the most critical, hard, time-consuming things. I had a question for Justin. We've talked a lot about this new way of calling the new RPCs from Giddily that will allow us to get the change paths and then each individually batches of change paths. What's the status on those RPCs? Are they already implemented? Are they on the road to be implemented? In terms of timeframes, what are we looking at?
Yeah, so we have one that's kind of sitting right now in limbo. The other one is more or less implemented. Just there's some refinements to the actual interface itself that we're kind of iterating on. So there's really just those two RPCs that are to diff the blob and then find the change paths. What we're really working on right now, and that's kind of the high priority, is to make this interface truly efficient under the hood. We need to make some changes to upstream some changes to Git itself to be able to appropriately batch diff generation for blobs. Otherwise, we run into some performance concerns of spinning up end processes for the amount of files we're basically diffing. So we're trying to remove that performance concern in Git itself right now. So that's kind of the focus right now before we shift back to actually implementing the RPCs. If we need the RPCs sooner, we can implement them. I can finish implementing them and you can use them. There's just gonna be some performance concerns on our side that we can ourselves fix down the road. So
Sure, that sounds perfectly reasonable in terms of time frame, by the way. I just wanted to understand whether that was something that was still being like thought out, being refined, but it seems like it's in dev overall.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's perfectly acceptable. Just for your information, I would say is that we're looking to break down the work in 1610 and then potentially look at all the units that we've identified, which are the ones that are more mature and we know we're going to need, and then potentially start discussing about scheduling some work in 1611, the bits that are mature, but there's going to be a bunch of immature parts. So what if it's not ready for us to start piggybacking on? It's fine. We'll pick it up the next time. But like you said, we're not going to be turning this on like within the next 2 or 3 months. It's going to take a little longer than that. So even if we do use the RPCs and they're not performant, it's fine. While we figure it out, we'll be potentially even giving you feedback of anything and testing. But it will be, once it's launched, it will be available for anybody to use in production. Or are you planning a slow rollout to that, those RPCs? Are you just building them and making them available?
Yeah, the RPCs will just basically build and make available, and then we can iterate on them as if there's any more additional needs for the interface. We can kind of add additional options or stuff to the RPCs to fit the use case better. And yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I feel like that would be a good improvement for us. For you, Francois, we're then going to have a conversation whether it's worth updating the current implementation of diffs and merge requests to reflect these new changes on Gitaly, or do we just wait for the new diffs? But that's a conversation for a separate context. Cool. Any more thoughts, questions on this? I'm going to put here last point. Right, I'll move on to the next point then. So naming update. So we've talked about the naming of the project in the past. A refresher, the reason why we've like started this conversation is because I was having talks with people outside of this group. And it was kind of like hard to convey what new diffs actually meant. Like, is it just like a new theme? Is it just a new typeface? You know what I mean? Like there's of course they didn't assume that, but I'm joking. So we needed a name that was easy to convey what we're trying to do here, what's our priorities, and what's the goals of the project. We threw around a couple of them, and we wanted to move away from merge requests because it's kind of like not just merge requests, it's every context of diffs. And we've been talking about this informally back and forth, through one-on-ones and Slacks and all that stuff. And Stanislav yesterday or this week proposed something like streaming diffs. And because we are employing part of the architecture is to use streaming data to make things just be like constantly delivering to the browser and all that stuff. We started there. And then I told them that I feel like that's a very invisible part of the implementation. It's not going to be very impactful to users. And maybe it's not even obvious to them that streaming will make things faster. So building up on that and, like word family style, kind of arrived on a potential proposal, which would be full name reusable and rapid diffs, or just reusable rapid diffs. But maybe we can just call it rapid diffs for short. And the reasons for that is like the reusable is literally just to make sure that people understand that it's reusable. So what I would do is like if I'm talking to Darva or to, a group product manager, I would use the full title. Just talking here is just replacing new diffs for rapid diffs or just diffs. I mean, we're all family here. The rapid, it's cute because it's fast. It also has the little like still part of the streams things, which is rapid. So as long as we get a good boat, we should be fine. Now, again, we don't need to spend too much time on this. This is just marketing, I would say, but it is relevant for the part that we'll be doing now about prioritization and conversation about work. So I want to open up the conversation. Do you have any thoughts on that? Does it make sense? Do you think it's horrible?
I think reusable and rapid diffs is a bit of a mouthful, but I think since we'll probably mostly be referring to as rapid diffs, that's probably fine. I do prefer rapid over new because new just means doesn't convey anything. Like it's just new.
And it's ephemeral. Like new quickly becomes old. You know,
Yes.
The new car smell goes away. And it's replaced by Dorito smell. But maybe that's just my car. Okay, that sounds reasonable. That's why I thought about we can use, and I'm thinking about the new diffs, Epic renaming to them like reusable in parentheses, and then just rapid diffs, so people understand that we're focusing on the rapid diffs as a comms thing. But we'll figure it out. Any more thoughts on that? Is it good, bad?
I just thought about this. Maybe consider naming it next diffs. Like new is getting called pretty soon, as you've mentioned, but next, like this is clearly like the next iteration of the diffs. But just an idea. I have no objections over the rapid diffs.
No, I was thinking because we already have next in the vocabulary of GitLab. When you use the next next on GitLab.com to toggle the version that you're getting from GitLab. I mean, it's very internal, but I think there's even a project for it. Yes, project for next GitLab.com. I don't know. I think next suffers the same problem as new. Like next, and then once we have that implemented, what we'll call it? We'll rename it. We could call it 2024 or fiscal year 25, but we might take longer to deliver. I'm kidding. I don't know. I don't want to commit with the time frame right now. But I don't know. Next kind of feels like the same problems of new. That's for me.
Introduce the concept of diff years and make them even more confusing by tying them maybe to
like
maybe right now we're in diff year 26, for example. That could be a thing.
No, we could launch a new diffs every year. How about that? With in-app purchases? Come on. It's a killer idea. Anyway, I'm wasting your time. Okay, so if you have any thoughts on that more than this or objections, I heard you, Stanislav, about the next, but I think I can imagine the conversation I would have with Darva, and she would say it's exactly the same thing. So I think I'm going to go with that proposal, and if somebody has objections or thinks it's a bad idea, just let me know on Slack, and I can, of course, correct if need. Okay. Any more points? I had a last minute discussion item. No. I will say that I have pending to-dos to make a call to continue the discussion of front-end architecture. It's just that we have so much things in flight, the documentation of data, the breakdown of works. I don't want that to get in the way of everybody's capacity. So that's more for front-end engineers. But that is on my mind that we need to come back to that discussion and document the exact parts, how we're going to do the architecture on the front end. So that's just an FYI. But in the meantime, stress testing. So we've talked about in the past couple of weeks about we have seen the POCs. We know that the POCs are unoptimized code, especially the DOM operations. They're very much like POC level maturity. But at the same time, I feel like we need to have a bit more confidence in the proposal route that we're taking, and I think we need to invest a bit more time in stress testing the architecture of server-side rendering and streaming and all that stuff, even with caching and all that stuff. So we should potentially come up with a few scenarios to stress test it and to see where the bottlenecks are in the current thing. On Friday, Phil helped me with this, and we did stumble upon a couple of like issues and problems that we need to pair up with Stanislav to kind of figure out, but that's happening regardless. But I just wanted to kind of like open that idea that I think while we're having all this work and all these things, challenging our assumptions is healthy. And the quicker we can find what the bottlenecks are, the quicker we can, build workarounds or devise plans to mitigate them, and maybe even learn ahead of time about potential blockers. So yes, there's an issue for the stress testing of that. And I think that's kind of like where I wanted to get to, is like prioritize that issue a little bit more. And I know that we have a lot of stuff on the plate already, but I think we need to do this over the next couple of weeks to increase the confidence on the proposal. And that's kind of like, that's it. That I don't have any particular assignee thing in my mind, because I know that Thomas and Stanislav, you're very busy with stuff. Phil, I would love to have your help here, but you're probably going to need some support from Stanislav. I know I said I didn't have an assignee, and then I called you out, Phil, but maybe we can do a pairing with Stanislav to figure out exactly how we can take this POC and navigate the known limitations of the maturity, but still at the same time push it a little bit to the edge and see where it breaks. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Yep.
Okay, so plan of action. We'll pair up with Stanislav to see where that is, where those limitations are, and then we'll get a planning course to break it, I would say. So if that's the case, then I'm going to assign you to that issue, Phil, which informally that was already the case, because I was asking you on Friday to do it, to check a few things. So if somebody else wants to help, don't let the assignee stop you. Assign yourself and help out Phil, and we can always pair. Okay, we'll get that sorted out of the call. Any more topics, thoughts, questions, jokes? Tapped out, all good. All right, then I'll give you some time back. Thanks everybody for a healthy discussion. I'll post a summary later today on the Epic about this week's updates, and yeah, carry on the great work. We are loving to see the movement.